Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking all about the FIA, specifically, are the FIA interfering with race results and all the other inconsistency in steward decisions that we saw at the Mexican Grand Prix. So first of all, the big issue that we had was that very late virtual safety car because of the Carlos Sainz incident. So first, let's take a quick look at what actually caused the virtual safety car. So as you can see here, Carlos Sainz coming through the stadium section, his car sounds a bit like a bag of bolts over the curb and into the wall. I'm assuming there was some sort of issue with his car anyway, and obviously he's got a massive steering issue, can't get the car in a straight line despite being on full lock, and he sort of limps back into this little runoff area. But notice he doesn't park the whole way in. Now, this is a bit of an issue because I've seen so many people saying that Carlos Sainz's car was completely behind the barriers, and that simply isn't true. There is also this photo that'll pop up here, and this is Carlos Sainz getting out of the car. So again, you can see the car is not fully behind the barriers, and the car is also smoking, suggesting the car is either on fire or it could catch fire soon. So for the FIA to call a virtual safety car, I do believe was the correct decision. Now, I don't like races being decided because of virtual safety cars or any sort of post-race penalty. As a racing fan, that's the thing I hate the most, and I'm sure you'll all agree with me there. But when you consider where Carlos Sainz's car actually is, you can understand why the virtual safety car was thrown. You could argue that this could have been done under double-waved yellows, and I probably would agree with that too. So you could say that this is the FIA being sort of erring on the side of caution. Maybe it's marginal, maybe it's a yellow flag, maybe it's a virtual safety car, so they're like, we'll go on the side of caution. At the end of the day, the FIA race control, one of their biggest, most important jobs is safety. And I think that this is really important because I have seen so many people, literally hundreds of comments in my TikTok videos and other people's videos, talking about the FIA interfering because they want Lando Norris. For some reason, the FIA wants Lando Norris to be champion. And there's a few issues that I've got with that. First of all, obviously Lando was always going to win that race. The virtual safety car had no bearing on that. He was 30 seconds ahead with 2 laps to go. Lando's always going to win that race. But then I've seen people saying this virtual safety car stopped Max from overtaking Charles and stopped Oscar from overtaking Piastri, meaning that Lando gets a bigger point advantage with a few races to go. And again, I do take issue with this because if the FIA really did want Lando to win, they could just give Max Verstappen a 5-second, a 10-second penalty for the incident that happened at the start of the race where he ran wide, or they could also give him a penalty for this incident that he had with Lewis Hamilton as well in turn 1. So just to clarify there's no British bias FIA conspiracy theories going on here, and they are certainly not trying to sabotage Max Verstappen from winning this world championship. And obviously, we will never know if Max would have gotten past Charles, because honestly, even without this virtual safety car, he only had one more lap to actually try and overtake Charles. So the yellow flags came out there on lap 70, and Max did have a go into turn 1 on lap 70, but it was just a few tenths too far back from Charles, meaning that on lap 71 he would have had his final opportunity. But of course, this was the lap that the virtual safety car was out, so Max had no hope going into turn 1. And just before the virtual safety car came out, Max was only about 4 tenths back from Charles, so I would bet good money on Max getting past Charles there. I will admit, I definitely think he would have gotten past. I'm not saying that Max had no hope of getting past Charles. I definitely do think that he would have done, but there's no way of 100% guaranteeing that that would have happened. Let's be honest, it's not as if Charles is just going to let Max get past him into turn 1. Charles is a very good racing driver, and Charles has raced against Max for their entire career, so Charles really knows how Max thinks. And the same can be said for Ollie Behrman and Oscar Piastri. There's no guarantee that Piastri would have definitely gotten past. And what really makes me laugh about all this, if the FIA actually wanted to guarantee that Max didn't get past Charles and that Oscar didn't get past Behrman, why would they then remove the virtual safety car with 1 lap remaining? They wouldn't do that. That would make no sense. They would just end it under the virtual safety car. So to clarify, I think the virtual safety car was the correct decision. Yes, maybe it was a little bit too cautious, but again, safety in motorsport is very, very important, so you can see why they erred on the side of caution and decided to throw the VSC. But when we're talking about erring on the side of caution, how on earth were there marshals on the track at turn 1 picking up debris when Liam Lawson was coming around the corner? If you haven't seen it yet, take a look at the video. It is absolutely terrifying. Lawson comes on turn 1 and there's 2 marshals running across the circuit. So at the same time that the FIA is throwing a virtual safety car when they maybe didn't need to, you've got marshals running on the track picking up debris. And this is what everyone just finds so frustrating about the FIA. They are so consistently inconsistent. You can't have a very conservatively thrown virtual safety car and then also have marshals on the track at the exact same event. Make it make sense. And now let's discuss quickly the other major stewarding decision, that was Lewis Hamilton's 10-second time penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. So first of all, I need to cover lap 1, turn 1, because I've seen a lot of talk on social media about this as well. In my comments, people asking why Max didn't get a penalty. And I know that the stewards are always a little bit more lenient with lap 1, turn 1. I do get it, but it seems like with where Max is positioned, he was never intending to make that corner. There's plenty of space on the track, but Max doesn't seem to want to go there. I think this is just a case of Max outfaking himself going into turn 1, wanting to be super aggressive. Obviously, he's fighting for a championship. I'm not going to hold that against him. Of course, he wants to make up positions at the start. But of course, Max isn't the only driver to go off. Charles Leclerc also went off just after. And if you take a look at this photo here, you can see that Lewis Hamilton is clearly ahead of Charles Leclerc. But of course, Charles takes to the grass and comes back on ahead of both Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton. Of course, he gives the position back up to Lando, but he doesn't give the position to Lewis. So Lewis is obviously very frustrated with this because he's seen Max and Charles both go off and stay ahead of him. Max did end up, of course, giving that position back, but Charles didn't. Then a few laps later, on lap 6, Max Verstappen goes for a holy dive bomb on Lewis Hamilton. And this was a mega move. Unfortunately for Max, he wasn't really in full control of his car. Obviously, Max did come from quite far back, and if Max did manage to keep it on track without bumping into Lewis and pushing Lewis wide, that would have been a fantastic move, but unfortunately, he wasn't in full control of his car. Max runs over the curbs going into turn 1, and that sort of unsettles his car, and that leads him to sort of understeer into the side of Lewis, forcing Lewis off the circuit, and of course, Lewis doesn't have anywhere to go, so Lewis has to go off the track, which obviously hinders him. So again, if the FIA wanted to, they could have just given Max Verstappen a 5-second, a 10-second, a 20-second stop and go penalty if they really wanted to hinder his championship chance, but they didn't. So then going into turn 4, obviously Lewis wants to get his elbows out. There's no love lost between the two of them. After 2021, these guys race hard. And of course, going into turn 4, Lewis locks up, goes wide, and then comes back on the circuit ahead of Max Verstappen. And of course, this is what gets Lewis the penalty. But a 10-second time penalty for Lewis Hamilton seems very aggressive, considering that other drivers did a very similar thing a few laps prior to this and got no penalty at all. And even on the very same lap, Max Verstappen pushing Lewis wide at turn 1. Max doesn't get a penalty for that, but then Lewis gets a penalty for this. I need to clarify here, I don't think that this is the FIA playing favourites, or that the FIA hates Lewis, or that they love Max, or they love Lando, and they hate Oscar. I just think this is incompetence. And it's exactly that incompetence that I at first thought was the reason for this virtual safety car. Because of the poor TV direction and the lack of information that we as fans were getting, we were led to believe that the Carlos Sainz was completely behind the barriers, the car was fine, there was no issues, let's get racing. But we didn't get to see any of this, and I really don't understand why. If there's a virtual safety car, show us what's caused the virtual safety car. There's no point seeing the cars drive around at 40% speed. Like, that's boring. I don't want to see that. If there's a car in the wall, if there's a car DNF stuck on the track, show me that. Otherwise, of course, fans are going to have all this speculation, these conspiracy theories, because we don't know what's going on. The only other major stewarding decision we saw yesterday was actually for Carlos Sainz, for speeding in the pit lane multiple times. From what I can make out, his pit lane speed limiter, the button that he presses down to hold at 50 kilometers an hour, just wasn't working, so it was causing his car to jolt back and forth, which is obviously completely out of his control. These cars don't have a speeder on them, so Carlos has got no way of knowing how quick he's going, which is a real shame for Carlos. I think he was having a decent race, and in the end, obviously, it didn't really matter, whatever the engine issue was, or whether it was just a crash which caused his car to DNF. A real big shame for Carlos. He's having a great season this year, got P3 in the sprint race last weekend, and then now to come here to a DNF is a bit of a shame. So to sum up and clarify, I do not believe that there's any grand conspiracy down at the FIA. I think this is just pure incompetence that we see week in, week out from this governing body. And it's a real shame because all I want to see is cars racing on track. I don't want to see late safety cars deciding things. I don't want Abu Dhabi 21 deciding the championship. And it's a real shame now. If Lando does go on to win this championship, like he maybe will do, I'm kind of expecting that he will, just because of how the momentum's going. The tracks that are left seem to suit Lando. Oscar's having a bit of a dip in performance at the moment, and Red Bull maybe isn't as quick as we last thought. So if Lando does go on to win this championship, people are going to be claiming like, the FIA helped him get 2 extra points over Max in Mexico, and I didn't let Behrman get overtaken by Oscar. Like, it's all a bit, take your tinfoil hat off, yeah? So that's the video for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed my little rant about the FIA. Who knows, maybe this will be a weekly video ranting about all things stewarding decisions. Let me know if that's something you guys would like to see. Subscribe if you're new, like the video. Let me know your thoughts on the Mexican Grand Prix in the comments. And if you guys are on TikTok, I also have a TikTok page that I am a lot more active on, daily videos posted there, as well as the occasional live post-qualifying and post-race. And let me know your thoughts in the comments as to who you are backing for this year's championship. Is it Team Oscar, Team Lando, or are you Team 5 Stappen? Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.